Good evening. Sorry for the delay, and welcome to the Board of Commissioners meeting for Monday, January 27th, 2025. Could you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. I want to give notice that we had an executive session prior to this meeting to discuss personnel and legal issues. And next of note, with great pleasure, I want to recognize the Finance Department for receiving the 13th consecutive Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting from the Government Finance Officers Association. This is for the 2023 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report and Audit. Mr. White, you want to add anything?
Yes, thank you very much. I would just like to echo the recognition to finance. What we don't see in these meetings is the tremendous amount of effort that is put in by the Finance Department. In fact, they're getting ready to start that for the 2024 audit as we speak. But the amount of work that goes into compiling the information that leads to our audited financial statements is an impressive undertaking. As you can imagine, the guidelines and the reporting requirements are pretty strict, but it is something that to a person within that department they all take very seriously, and it starts really way back at emphasizing the importance of every transaction that occurs within this municipality and our operation. It's something that every single person in that department takes, like I said, very seriously. They're very professional, and they work in a manner that is very team-focused and bring all the other departments along in compliance. Many of those departments aren't finance experts, but finance does a really good job of making it easy, and everyone does a good job of making sure that it is something that is critically important and something that we take very, very seriously. At the end of the day, we have to have confidence in our accounting and our financial numbers. It's critical, and I'm happy and proud of the group we have that oversee that on a day-to-day basis, especially Amy Lacey, our Assistant Finance Director, is here tonight. She heads this project up annually, and is taking more and more of the reins as we go and does a fantastic job. Lastly, just to touch on how this all evolved, back in 2010, there was a significant number of audit comments that the Township needed to resolve. The Board of Commissioners at the time made that an absolute priority, and from the board's leadership down, it was made clear that we needed to ensure internal controls. We needed to make sure that transactions were meeting all of the strict auditing guidelines, and this group has made sure that all has taken place to the point where those audit comments were cleaned up in just a few years, and now we've gone on a nice run. I forget the number of years where we have not had any additional comments made during the audit process. And as the board is aware, we've set up the checks and balances between the Citizens Audit Committee, the Board of Commissioners, and Township staff, where those issues are all discussed separate from one another and in separate meetings, where the Board of Commissioners gets direct access to the auditors themselves, and that is to ensure that the lines of communication are open between all the groups, and there's no opportunities for one group to try to play any games with information or audit findings. So I'm very proud of the process. I'm proud of our team. They deserve this award. It is the highest form of recognition in government finance and accounting, and they've done it again for the 13th consecutive year. So thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations, Ms. Lacey and Mr. Tate. Next, we will have public participation, but I do want to make one quick announcement. First, from the business agenda, we are going to be polling 3H. So if anyone is out there dying to talk about that one, it'll be at a future meeting. Next is public participation. Anybody? No? Seeing none, we'll go on to the consent agenda. Is there any item on the consent agenda that any commissioner or member of the public would like to pull? Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Unanimous. All right, let's move on to the business agenda. Item 3A is Ordinance 2025-01, introduced at a previous meeting, is up for adoption. It's the Radnor Township fee schedule for 2025. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
And a second? Thank you, Commissioner Agnew. Mr. Tate?
Thank you, Madam President. As you mentioned, it was introduced at the January 6th meeting, and for tonight's agenda is just the formal adoption by the board to make the fee schedule effective for budget year 2025.
Thank you so much. Any commissioner comments or questions? Any public comment? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Item 3B, Resolution 2025-03, authorizing the township manager to contract with MGT LLC, an executive search firm for placement of a fire and emergency medical services, or EMS, chief to be funded from the general fund in an amount estimated not exceed $25,000. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
And a second? Second. Mr. White?
Thank you, Madam President. I have a presentation that I would like to step through that will provide some of the background on a topic that has been discussed in various different forms and meetings over the last couple of years. Most recently, if you'll recall, during the budget discussions, it was identified a resource dedicated to providing the township with leadership on the fire and EMS side was included as part of the budget conversation. So what I was hoping to do tonight is just step through a little bit of history, which may be most people in this room probably already know, but if there's anyone watching, a little bit on how we got to where we're at tonight and why we're making this recommendation. Regards to the current response makeup, some of the issues facing the township, what the financial impact is, some details on the position itself, the engagement, which is obviously tied to the resolution, how this position will fit within the organization, and then ultimately the recommendation. For those that aren't aware, when it comes to fire and EMS response, it is broken up into three broad categories between fire, EMS, and then there is the fire safety inspection services. On the fire side, Radnor is fortunate to be served by three volunteer fire companies between the Radnor Fire Company, the Bryn Mawr Fire Company, and Broomall Fire Company. For the EMS service, it's the Radnor Fire Company, and that has been the case since roughly 2010, 2011. And then on the fire safety inspection side, it is within the township's community development department. For the most of the past, that has been a vacant position. We did have a resource that worked for us for about a year that got the process started, but then ultimately decided to go back to their old job. So that position has been vacant since then. When it comes to fire response, the township is broken up into three areas as shown on the map. The yellow area is the coverage area from Radnor Fire Company. The blue area is Bryn Mawr Fire Company, and then the small quadrant down in the south portion of the town is covered by Broomall Fire Company. One quick note with this is they're the first fire companies called on calls within those areas. Certainly for active fires or active responses, you'll see trucks represented by multiple companies showing up to the scene to help assist. And there's always mutual aid and opportunities for that. But in terms of first call, this is the coverage of the township. This data is directly from the Radnor Fire Company website. I put it in here tonight not to be laser accurate with the call information, because there is, as I just noted, there is some confusion with the numbers. So, for example, Radnor Fire Company and their call volume, both on fire and EMS, not 100% of those are in Radnor. They do respond outside of Radnor for assists and the like, but I thought this information does do a pretty good job of visually demonstrating the importance on the EMS side and the significantly greater number of calls on a regular basis for that reason versus the fire calls, roughly a 2-to-1 ratio. But there are, in terms of the total numbers, roughly 1,000 calls that Radnor's running on the fire side and over 2,500 in 2024 on the EMS side. So a quick note with regard to our relationship with the fire companies that I want to make as clear as possible going into this conversation is that the discussion itself has nothing to do with the service performed by the fire company partners. This is a township resource. It's not intended to replace the volunteer element of the fire companies. Instead, we're hoping that this person will serve as a better resource for them in doing business with the township, and I'll get into a little bit of that later on. I just want to echo what we had heard directly from the Radnor Fire Company's business administrator back at the December 9th meeting about promoting an ongoing positive relationship and partnership. All three companies continue to perform these essential services with absolute dedication and professionalism. They're a great partner when we're doing incidents, the softer side of things, the parades and the other community events. They're a great partner with, and they always represent Radnor in a very positive way. One note, in my years in this position, I've not received a single complaint when it comes to the services performed by any of these fire companies or the EMS service. And that's a great compliment to the work that they do. As we all know, it's not easy. And then specific to Radnor Fire Company, a compliment to them over the last 12 to 18 months. Regular communications and meetings with the township administration, and they've also, as two of the Board of Commissioners especially know, they've added two of our commissioners as liaisons to their board as well. So they've been attending those meetings and being part of that process too. So some of the issues that have been that we're facing that have been discussed in various forms over the last couple of years. Specific to Radnor Fire Company, we are aware, as they've reported, ongoing fiscal deficits to the tune of about $200,000. That number grows over the next couple of years exponentially up to well over $1 million, with concerns of exhausting funds within that window. At the same time, and associated with those costs increases that's causing the deficit, Radnor Fire Company reached out to the township requesting participation in a Safer Communities grant last year to add 6 full-time equivalents, with the ultimate goal or the ultimate staffing model being 13 full-time equivalents to bring the department up to a full 24/7, 365 paid department. And that is obviously a product of dwindling volunteer numbers, compounded with the regular or increasing calls for service. On the finance side, as we went through the budget process, we heard from both Radnor Fire and Bryn Mawr Fire requesting additional cash contributions to help offset the rising costs, both on the equipment and operating side. And those amounts, $176,000-ish for Radnor Fire Company. We know specifically based on the deficit that number is a bit understated versus what is actually needed to close their gap. Some anecdotal issues, and I apologize, I hate this slide, but really what this is getting at is, as things stand now, the fire companies don't have a resource at the township for ongoing requests, issues. While meetings occur, they're usually bifurcated among various parties. Sometimes they'll meet with the finance department, sometimes they'll meet with me, sometimes they'll meet with police, sometimes they'll meet with engineering, depending on what the topic is. I'm sure they meet periodically with commissioners, and those conversations mature in different ways about different issues. And ultimately, the last bullet identifies is the way to address the long-term going concern status resulting from the declining funds and declining volunteerism, the township needs to be in position with a resource, an expert that can efficiently collect the information from all of the parties involved, consolidate that information into one easy to understand, expert-based set of decision-making criteria that can then be funneled through this board and our decision-making process. And that, what I just described, is very similar to what we see from our various departments as they exist today. So having that resource on staff here would be a central point, a resource for the fire companies. A visual demonstration, and this actually was based on a real example that occurred within the last couple of years, is there was a land development issue that from a staff perspective, we were engaged from day one with the Board of Commissioners, providing feedback and information that ultimately led to a land development agreement. And then it was after the fact we learned that the fire companies, in this case, the location of the development is in the Bryn Mawr section of town, but it has a heavy impact on EMS services. And there were the communication and involvement of the fire companies in that land development process was a good example of we're having a staff resource here just streamlines how they're involved in those decision-making instances. In this particular case, it was the senior living facility over on the Jewish Federation site where, some very, very specific instances of just fire truck access, making sure that the turn radiuses are sufficient enough for people to get in and out, for the trucks to get in and out of there, as well as we've had, in not particular to this situation, but the code may say, you need this size nozzle for a fire hose, but in the last 4 years they've come up with a more efficient this size nozzle, and unless they're at the table as part of those conversations, some of those details get missed. And then ultimately with this particular development, we, after the fact, started having serious discussions about assistance on the EMS side and what the impact of that facility might have on that. So that's just, I thought, a really good example of where having that resource on staff immediately plugs them into the conversation, and they are part of the input throughout and at the end of the day, the Board of Commissioners has a little bit more complete information on decision-making. Changing gears to some of the financial considerations, I know the board is aware of this. What we're looking at here is the graph on the left, as you're looking at, is the aggregate of the direct funding contributions that Radnor makes to all three fire companies. As you can see from 2015, over the last 10, 11 reporting cycles, that number continues to increase significantly from about 400,000 up to, in 2024, we were just over 1.4 million. For 2025, there's two different numbers represented. The number embedded in the graph is what was requested. That was the number that's reaching close to 1.8 million. The yellow shaded bar is what was included in the board's budget. The graph on the right is the exact same information, just separated by fire company. As you can see, the Radnor Fire Company is the company where the significant amount of money, the most significant amount of money, is provided. Couple quick footnotes just to make sure that we're all clear on what's being reported. These numbers do not include workers' compensation, fuel, the state volunteer relief funding, or the hydrant water. Those numbers were taken out because at the end of the day, those are going to be costs that the township is paying no matter what. So ultimately, we're talking about a multi-million-dollar decision going forward. So it's a large financial consideration. Specific to the fire and EMS chief position, this was included in this year's budget at 150. We anticipated some amount of that going to an executive recruiting firm because we wanted a nationwide reach on the recruitment. So we knew there was going to be some costs associated with that. We anticipated that taking some amount of months this year to cover. So the 25 that's included in this engagement is part of the 150, with the balance going towards whatever the ultimate salary and benefit numbers are. The position is headcount neutral. This is what is being presented tonight would replace the existing unfilled position in the Community Development Department on the fire safety side, inspection side. So we would do away with the inspector position in favor of filling it with a chief position that is a little bit more broad-based in scope. At the same time, as I just talked about on the previous slide, we did consider reducing the fire company funding for a couple different reasons. First, to reevaluate capital purchases and its relationship with the relief funding, as well as to reevaluate the internal decisions and resources needed. We needed, seeing that this was not a one-year problem, or one-year issue to resolve. This is a long-term. We're at a point now where long-term decisions are going to become necessary. The funding in future years for the position itself is expected to come out of the roughly 1.6 to 1.8 that we're allocating in the budget already. The position also has been formulated or defined in a similar fashion as positions that exist in some of our surrounding municipalities. We've spent the last 4 to 6 months working with those municipalities, meeting with them one-on-one, going through job descriptions, asking them what worked, what didn't work, what do they recommend if they were rewriting the position for today. And some of those municipalities are listed between Lower Merion, Upper Merion. Tredyffrin's position we're meeting with in a couple weeks. Lower Moreland, we're scheduling a meeting. We've already met with them multiple times. So this isn't something that we just worked on internally. We have reached out to our counterparts who are dealing with the exact same issues in their municipalities, and they've been very open and forthcoming with information that's helped us formulate what is ultimately here tonight. Some of the highlights from the job description: to oversee fire response in partnership with our volunteer companies, to oversee the EMS response in Radnor Township, monitor response times, forecast service issues, present recommendations as needed, participate in the evaluation of apparatus needs, facility needs, purchasing, and the shared use. As this board knows, and we've heard presentations from time to time from the fire companies, trucks are $2 million plus in some cases, so these pieces of equipment are significant financial investments. We know that ambulances are several hundreds of thousands of dollars individually as well. So having that expert on our side working with those fire companies and being able to communicate across fire companies would be a benefit. Also, we want this person to oversee the fire safety inspection program. We want this person to perform our fire investigations, which right now is outsourced on a contracted basis whenever there's a fire. And then also to provide my position along with the Board of Commissioners with consolidated funding forecasts on an ongoing basis, both on operating and capital. Again, for those commissioners that have been here for a few years, back when we used to receive or have the fire companies come and present at our meetings, you'd hear each one individually, and all of their requests made a ton of sense. And it's difficult in those scenarios to weigh one against the other when you only have a finite amount of money. So our goal with this position is those meetings are happening on a daily basis throughout the year, and we're planning and forecasting those estimates. And then ultimately, when it comes to the Board of Commissioners, it'll be included in the budget document, and we will have a chief here that is already gone through and validated the numbers and can support them and answer questions directly. So it's no longer one fire company against another or fire companies against, the library or any of the other funding decisions that the board has to make. We want this person to participate in the Public Safety Committee meetings. I'll get into that in a little bit. Also participate in the Radnor Police Department's emergency response collaboration meetings. Quickly, that is something that Sergeant Gluck, through the authorization from the chief, instituted several years ago, where the police department meets regularly with the 3 fire companies and other related entities from the county, and depending on what the topic is, bringing folks in to make sure that the combined response to specific incidences are discussed prior to them happening. So if there's a major event, like maybe somebody wins the Super Bowl, I don't know if that's going to happen, but chances are better today than they were on Saturday. But our folks will get together in these types of meetings and plan that stuff out. So this brings, again, a township resource into those meetings who can coordinate the messaging between the companies as someone that's representing the township. Also development in planning as it relates to land development planning as it relates to fire and EMS. That goes back to the example I gave a few moments ago. That is always a critical element, and it's not always included. Finally, I wanted to make sure that we noted that this position is not impacting existing positions within those fire companies. Those will remain as is, as defined by their own bylaws. To provide the board with a kind of a snapshot of what's expected of our candidate should this go forward between now and the end of this year, we would expect forecasting a candidate on board in the May window. In the first couple of months, it'll be imperative that they develop the relationship with those fire companies, establish working committees, involve them in recommendation development in a way that makes sure that those fire companies have a voice in what is happening next as it relates to these lines of service. We also need this person to do an ordinance review. There's probably going to be some code changes that need to happen within our administrative code and various areas that need to be amended based on this to make sure that the authorities of our position are in line with what we're asking the fire companies to do. Public Safety Committee, one of the elements that has been requested by the fire companies over years and years is for the Board of Commissioners to consider a subset. This was something that the commissioners used to do years ago. They'd have subset of commissioners operating in various committees. What's being recommended here is a safety committee where it allows that subset of commissioners to hold public meetings and have agendas specific to the topics at hand, in this case specific to fire response, EMS response. It'll also give the opportunity for police to report on elements within their department, and it just provides a level of transparency to the public as this matures over time. Specific to the services at hand, we're hoping that with regard to EMS, that based on call volume and the importance of the EMS service, that the person prioritizes that, dives in, gets an understanding of what the situation is within the Radnor Fire Company, as well as mutual aid, the call volume, the types of services between ALS and BLS. And we're hoping that within a couple of months, they're able to produce some sort of recommendation on the best way that that service can move forward. Same thing on the fire side, develop the working knowledge of the existing service, the call volumes, the times, the company coverages, the mutual aids, staffing resources, the apparatus needs, and how those are used between the three different departments depending on the need. I'm also reminded that false alarm calls is always a critical element and how those are addressed. It's a drain on all three of the companies. It's a drain on the volunteers. So addressing that in some fashion as well. And then finally on here is getting into the fire safety inspection service side of things. So we're being proactive in getting into the businesses and the apartment buildings to make sure that they are fire safe rated. Exits aren't being blocked. Sprinklers are working. There's software that's available. This is a little bit more down the road, but there's software that's available that can provide fire and police with a digital layout of these establishments, which would help in responses if the building's on fire, the fire guys, before they go in, know where the walls and doors are at. That is anticipated. That's something that we would like to see come out of the fire safety service. MGT, specific to the engagement that's part of this resolution. This firm has a proven track record of success across our country, over 100 fire chief appointments in the last 10 years in just about every state. The team that they've assigned to us that we've met with on a couple different occasions is experience rich, not just in terms of executive recruitment, but specific to fire chief positions. In fact, the lead served as a fire and EMS chief in Illinois earlier in their career. So they know the certifications, they know the issues facing the strains on the business itself between the lack of volunteerism, the difficulty it is to hire medics in this environment. These folks have expertise, actual working knowledge of those situations. They'll be able to identify the pluses and minuses in our candidates through their own experience, which I thought was very strong. They focus on governments primarily, some higher ed and pre-K education and nonprofits, so this is their niche. They help governments find these types of positions. The plan that they have, the phased recruitment process that they have is tried and true, but it is also tailored to fit what we want, and it's flexible to some of our demands. Like one of the elements that we insisted upon is having a key stakeholder group that is part of the process from the first phase through the sixth phase to make sure that the Board of Commissioners have an active role in this process, that our fire companies have an active role in this process, and then ultimately the leadership that we have administratively as part of it. So they're on board with that. They've done that with other clients, and they're happy to accommodate that as well. I've detailed out some of the pricing here. As the title said, a price not to exceed, we estimated not to exceed $25,000 because there is some diligence expenses and recruiting fees that they're small, but those could be less than the amounts shown. But we're getting about 175 hours of allocated services along with their proprietary recruiting software, the 6 phases that I'll show in a little bit more detail here in a sec, as well as the position itself. So the appointment is guaranteed for up to a year after the appointment. If for whatever reason our candidate doesn't work out, MGT will help us find the replacement. The phases is about a 14-week plan. These are the 6 different phases. Most of them are pretty intuitive. We'd start out by finalizing the assessment, creating the brochure, advertising for the candidate, and hitting the streets, as so to speak, with the outreach and the recruitment. MGT will provide the initial candidate evaluation and screening, and then ultimately present to the township and our key stakeholder group a list of recommended candidates, and then MGT will assist us through the interview process and ultimately up to an appointment. And again, that's a 14-week window, so that puts us in the early May-ish window. So in terms of how the fire chief would fit within the organization as it exists today, this is obviously a condensed version of our org chart, just showing the various departments that we have. So the Board of Commissioners with the Labor Council, Township Solicitor, and myself reporting up to you, we have the different departments under there, Finance, Engineering, ComDev, Parks and Rec, Public Works, Police, and then highlighted in blue and gold would be the new fire chief in that department. Calling it a department today, it's going to be a department of one until it's not. But going into it at this point, it's a department of one. So ultimately what got us to the point where you're allowing me this amount of time to give a presentation tonight. The issues surrounding the fire and EMS response are not going away. In fact, we have been put on notice by our companies that the concerns are growing and intensifying to a breaking point that is somewhere in the not too distant future. That being the case, fire and EMS response ultimately is the responsibility of the township's responsibility. So that a resource on our staff is critical to making sure that we are leading the process and the board is getting decision-making information from a sole township-related resource. It's not an insignificant amount of money. We're talking about 1.6 to 1.8 million today. We know that number is probably going to be north of that in the future, depending on volunteerism and the cost of full-time staff and what is necessary. So ultimately, a township position is critical. We think this is the right moment. These issues are only going to intensify as we go forward. So getting the person on staff now allows us, as I showed a couple slides ago, to get working on developing long-term solutions that the board can start reacting to later this year and ahead of the budget cycle for 2026 and beyond. So ultimately, there's 3 recommendations coming out of this presentation. The resolution that's in front of the board tonight is engaging MGT. We'd also, if the board agrees, identify those key stakeholder group that will be part of the recruitment process, and then consider establishing a public safety committee, again, to bring transparency to the discussion that allows the public and the board to stay on top of, some of the more day-to-day decisions. And with that, I appreciate the time, and would be happy to answer questions.
Any commissioner questions? You gave enough information, is what that is. It's
Always available going forward, too.
Question prevention, we like that. Okay, any members of the public have any questions or would like to participate? Seeing none. Yes.
I would just like to make a comment. I'm one of the commissioners that is now a liaison to the board of the Radnor Fire Company. One, thanks for starting this presentation as kind of establishing clearly the partnership that we have. I've found that to be true and only continuing to build. And from what I've heard in those rooms, and we've prepared the fire company for what this position is and what its intention is, and I think this is a really exciting moment to make sure that we are providing the resources where they need to be, and making sure that, like all of our other township efforts for public safety and response, that we have the best of the best. So I'm really excited about moving forward with this.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, just
Go ahead.
one question. So, Bill, you said so this position would take over as the fire inspector?
At some point, yes. There would be a fire inspector element to this program. Why I'm hesitating a bit is I'm not sure if the person we hire is going to be the inspector. I suspect that we'll hire a chief and we'll grow back into the inspection side of things, but that's just me kind of forecasting. But if the person has the expertise and the time, yes, that is an important element to this overall service. We'd like them to get going on it.
Okay, and how's that role being handled now?
Well, it's vacant, and I've been with the township for 14 years. It's been vacant for 13 of those 14 years. We had a person for about a year who started getting the program off the ground, 2022, 2023 window. We had that person for about a year. Ultimately, they decided to resign and go back to their old job because, quite frankly, they missed being on fire calls, and they wanted to go back to that, and we could not accommodate.
So how do we handle that position at the current time?
So those inspections are not occurring at the current time.
Oh.
I mean,
So if there's a fire, you need an inspector to come out there to do the investigation at the end of it, correct?
Okay, yes, so we're two different things, and I apologize if I misunderstood. There's an inspection service which is more proactive. So that is us getting into buildings ahead of time, identifying fire safety issues and concerns, and having the owner rectify those. That's what I'm referring to.
Okay.
Fire inspection is who comes in at the end when there's a fire, who investigates the source and has a legal requirement or legal obligation, and they work with the police department.
But this individual won't handle that.
I'm hoping that they will.
They will.
Yes.
Okay, and how's it currently handled?
So that is outsourced. Yeah, it's outsourced. So when we have a fire, there's a contact that we have that is called in. If they're not available, which was the case in an incident not too long ago, the state is called in.
Okay. But the idea is if we have this position, we don't have to outsource it anymore.
That is the idea, yes.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions?
I do.
Go ahead.
So one thing I'm a little confused about is that, so Lower Merion has this position, right? So Bryn Mawr Fire Company is actually in Lower Merion Township. So how's this work?
Well, that's where the
them.
development of the relationships is going to be
Okay.
critical. So, you know, the significant amount of what Bryn Mawr, how they're funded and how they're organized operationally is at the direction of the Lower Merion chief. But there is obviously a large component that comes here too. And so we have an active role in allocation of resources, apparatus needs, and those types of things.
So does that Lower Merion chief do the same thing that we're asking our chief to do, basically?
On paper, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we talked, I think Lower Merion has 6 different companies within their borders. So their chief is coordinating amongst the 6, we'll have the 3.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead.
So just on the title, fire chief, like, so does that replace what we have currently?
So what exists currently exists within the fire companies themselves. They
Right.
have chiefs, and no, this will not replace that. There is some redundancy in the terms, I admit, but at the end of the day, our person will have, because this is the township's response, the service itself is the township's responsibility. This will be the principal person to ensure that those responses on fire and EMS are occurring as the township directs. So it's a chief within that regard.
Yeah, maybe a different title. That's a bit confusing.
Go ahead.
Sorry, one question. Hey, when we do these inspections, we use the outside party to do it. Roughly how much is that?
Investigations?
Yeah. The
Just-
price to do that, say after just investigation.
Yeah, honestly, I'm off the top of my head, I am not sure. That is something that we can look up and get back to you.
Hopefully, it's because we don't have that many fires that you can't remember that number.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's obviously not an amount that jumps out at me, because you're right, we don't have that many. Having said that, I think we've had 2 working fires in the past month, so you just never know.
All right, any further questions or comments? Seeing none, any further public comment? Seeing none, I am going to ask to vote to approve Resolution 2025-03. All in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. All right, we're going to move on to 3C, Resolution 2025-17, authorization of the award of the contract for the installation of a left turn phasing on the traffic signals at the intersection of Lancaster Avenue, State Route 30, and North and South Wayne Avenue, State Route 1046, to Lenny Electric Corporation in the amount of $13,487 to be funded from the proceeds of the 2019 general obligation bond. Could I have a motion, please?
With enthusiasm.
Excellent. And a second. Second by Commissioner Riley. Mr. Norsini?
Thank you, Madam President. So this has been a long time coming. And just in a nutshell, so if you were heading southbound on North Wayne Avenue, so with, say, Christopher's on your right and Goat Spirit on your left, and you wish to go east on Lancaster Avenue and take a left, there will be a dedicated left-hand turn signal for you. And this project involves having Lenny Electric come in and replace one of the signal heads and do some wiring. And like I say, it's been a long time coming, and I know a lot of folks want it, so we're happy to try to get this done.
I'm very happy that it's coming.
Are there, I just had a
Go ahead.
quick question.
Yeah, I
for
was going to ask
Steve.
for,
Are there lane markings that are going to be changed, or is it just a signal?
So it should just be the signal head. There's going to be some signage, and we'll see if there are lane pavement markings that need to be done. That would happen in the spring.
any further questions or comments from commissioners? Seeing none, any public participation? Okay, I am going to call a vote on Resolution 2025-17. All in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. Next is 3D, Resolution 2025-18, authorization of the award of the contract for the preparation of the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, MS4, status report, illicit discharge detection and elimination inspections, and the development of the pollutant reduction plan, PRP, best management practices, prioritization, and implementation plan to Meliora Design in the amount of $52,472 to be funded from the Stormwater Fund. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
And a second? Second, thank you. Mr. Norsini again.
Thank you. So really, this proposal does two things. The MS4 status report, this is part of an unfunded mandate from the EPA to the DEP down to the townships. This is something that's been going on since 2002. It's just a continuation. This is the 5-year annual report. If you took a look at the proposal, there's MCM's minimum control measures, all these things that have to be done. So this is nothing new. This is the consultant we would use to do that, along with the illicit discharge detection. Probably what's a little more important, just as important, because the one is required, is the second part, the PRP, BMP prioritization and implementation plan, which we submitted our pollution reduction plan in 2017. It just got approved last year. We have 5 years to do that. So with the direction of the township manager, 5 years ago, we looked at that plan and we identified various properties where conceivably we could do these projects to meet the requirements. Things have changed, areas have been developed. So part of this is they're going to review our currently approved plan and go through there and update pricing from 2017, right, to give us a better idea of where we stand. We've also asked them to address to see if the development that's occurred and the stormwater management requirements we have on that development will count towards our pollution reduction. So they're going to evaluate 3 of those properties, and if they find that it's meaningful, they would give us a proposal to go back through a lot of our larger developments and see how that helps us. Then we're going to do hopefully develop a BMP prioritization matrix that summarizes everything we have to do, and they do it in project cost per pound of reduction, because that's what DEP is looking at. And when I say pollution, I should be very specific. It's sediment. It's sedimentation in the streams. It's not physical garbage that one might think of. And this matrix is going to help us to address where we need to go. Like I said, based on the manager's requirement, he said, hey, understand we have all these projects that total millions and millions of dollars, but we also want to do this in a way where not only can we meet our PRP requirements, but they are meaningful projects to the township and the township residents, to try to literally kill 2 birds with 1 stone instead of doing just strict sedimentation projects. And also included in this is one Board of Commissioners meeting to provide this plan to the board.
Thank you. That was very helpful. I was a little confused. So, all right. Any commissioner questions or comments? Commissioner Agnew.
Mr. Norsini, why Meliora? And I just say this in my limited experience with Meliora, with stormwater. They often recommend, or this is sort of the reputation, of natural remedies, if that's the right term, which was sort of letting things flood, that kind of thing.
I guess I know where you're going.
Not my favorite remedy, being in South Wayne. So can you tell me why it's Meliora?
Sure. So first off, the West Wayne Preserve is a Meliora design project. It is a habitat creation project. It is a wetlands mitigation project. But it is still a stormwater management project. But it has a different look because it's also a reforestation project. But Meliora also has a different engineering side, which is the South Wayne Municipal Parking Lot, which was straight, old-fashioned pipestone engineering, so they can do both. Meliora worked well with us on the creation of the original PRP plan, right? They did this for us and thought their approach was wide in depth and breadth, right? So we didn't just concentrate on, as you noted, perhaps the more natural ways. There also has to be some, for lack of a better term, standard engineering methods to deal with this. And they have a very good reputation in the industry. And to date, for the projects they've designed for us, they have served us well. And as required, there is in the back of the proposal is the breakdown of who's doing what and for how much. So I have good faith in Meliora. They've worked well with us, and the finished products we've gotten, South Wayne has held up and has done a very good job in flood reduction on South Wayne Avenue. Once the West Wayne Preserve has a chance to grow in, I mean, it was just my luck that we did it in the year where we had the least amount of rain in about 10 years. But we've had plenty of rain since then, and hopefully that continues. So in general, they do good work. They have a very good reputation, and they work well with DEP, which is where all this ends.
The three areas, I don't know if that's probably not the right term, was the three spots where they're going to study, or what are they?
So it's not spots.
I don't know exactly what the
Right,
right
so
term would be.
we have a pollution reduction plan, and again, that's sediment reduction. And in this plan is a list of a dozen projects on private and public property. And how we determined that was we literally took a map of the township and started to zoom in and said, okay, here's an area, because the township is very limited in doing stormwater management on property that it owns, right? We don't need easements if we can work on our own property, but that is very limiting. So we started to look at private property, right? Large parking lots, things like that. That was for the purpose of the plan, but we did not approach those folks because the plan is unfunded at this point. So as time has evolved, I asked them to look at, we have had considerable development in the township, large projects. Fox Lane Homes is Walnut Lane, right? We've had plenty, and there's considerable stormwater management as required as part of that. So I'm asking them to look at three of our largest ones and see if what was done there would count in a significant way towards our PRP sedimentation reduction requirements. If they do, now this would be a separate contract, we will provide them with the plans and stormwater calculations for many other larger projects. And to see, so in essence, the developers' stormwater management would conceivably count towards our pollution reduction. That's what that was about, which would lower the amount of projects we have to do.
Great, thank you.
Any further commissioner questions or comments? Any public participation? Seeing none, I'm going to call a vote on Resolution 2025-18. All in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. The next item is 3E, Resolution 2025-08, approving the purchase of 2 new hybrid vehicles for the use by the Radnor Township Police Department for $122,000 to replace Patrol Car 14 and Detective Car D2. The vehicles will be purchased under the 2025 Pennsylvania Co-Stars program. The funds for this purchase requisition will come from the approved 2025 Capital Improvement Plan. Could I have a motion, please? Commissioner Riley, and a second. Thank you. Chief?
Thank you, Commissioner. I have Kevin Gallagher, who takes care of our fleet, and if you have any questions, just let us know.
Perfect, thanks. Any commissioner questions or comments?
I just have a quick question. Can you give us kind of the tally of where we are on the hybrid and electric versus fuel vehicles?
Yes, Commissioner. So Currently, we have 3 electric vehicles in our fleet, which I believe are grants, which are used in one of our CSU unit and the administration. And then we are starting to phase these hybrids in. What we're seeing with the hybrids is a reduction in engine hours, less fuel. The engine hours actually is the big thing, with the reduction in maintenance that goes along with that.
Yeah, and what's the total fleet? So we've got 3 electric, we're gonna have 2 hybrid, and what's the total fleet?
So currently, we have the 3 electric, and I'm just going to go through some numbers. We currently have approximately 7 hybrids in service now. We started originally in 2020 with the K-9 vehicles, the
Yep.
specialty units. We have it now with the CSU unit and the highway unit. And we're starting to phase them into patrol.
And then the larger fleet is approximately, you don't have to give me an exact number, but how many other vehicles that are non-electric or hybrid?
Patrol, we have, I'm going to say approximately 15, 16.
15 or 16? Okay, that's all I wanted. Thanks.
Madam President, if I could just
Yes.
the other part of the conversation we've had internally is going forward, within the police department, there's some, the civilian, the ordinance enforcement, we anticipate replacing those cars when they're due with electric. You will see later, in a month or two, when we have a community development car that's scheduled to be replaced, that will be replaced with electric. So to the extent the non-patrol related vehicles are able to, within kind, vehicles that are able to charge, that's the plan, is to replace them with electric. And that's consistent with the energy reduction plan that the board adopted a few years ago.
For the hybrids, are any of them plug-in?
No, they're not.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, any public participation on this issue? Seeing none, I'm going to call for a vote on Resolution 2025-08. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous. All right, 3F, Resolution 2025-12. The Radnor Township Police Department requests to purchase 1 Ford all-wheel drive SSV marked police vehicle to replace Car 18. 1 vehicle currently in use by the police department and scheduled to be replaced in 2025 will be traded in at the current market value in the amount not to exceed $72,000. That's after the trade-in? Well, I'll ask my question later. The vehicle can be purchased under the 2025 Pennsylvania CoStars program. The funds for this purchase requisition will come from the approved 2025 Capital Improvement Fund. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
And a second? Second. Thank you. Chief or Mr. Gallagher?
Commissioners, this vehicle is one of our supervisor vehicle, Car 18. So it is a larger vehicle. That's why it's a separate one. It does not. It comes as is. What I mean by that, there is no hybrid option. There's no electric option for this vehicle.
Thank you.
And just for the commissioners, it carries specialized equipment that the patrol vehicles don't, a larger shield, carrying devices, forcible entry tools, and some other things that requires the size of that truck. So we only have 2 of them in case one breaks. So we try and run the smaller vehicles. And as of note, it is a V6 truck, so it is a more fuel efficient than the V8 options.
Excellent. And my question was, so with the trade-in, it's not to exceed 72,000? Is that the?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. The way I read it, I got a little mixed up, I think. Okay, any commissioner questions or comments about this?
So is that the cost of the vehicle, the 72,000, not to exceed 72,000?
So that 72,000 is going to include the vehicle, the paint, and upfit. That'll include everything.
Okay. So can you break that down? What do you think the cost of the vehicle is
The vehicle
versus-
is 52, I can tell you exactly what the vehicle is. 52,535 is the price of the vehicle.
Okay. And then roughly 20,000 for
Paint and upfit.
the upfit? I mean, how much of that is the upfit?
It's going to be about 16,000, 16 to 18,000, just for that. When we say upfit, police vehicles come with 2 seats in the front. So we put everything from the console, all the lights, any kind of barriers, and all the mounts that go in there. So there is a significant upfit to the vehicle itself. They pretty much put a second electrical system in that vehicle. It will be painted, and then graphics.
Okay, and those are typical costs?
The last set we saw actually for patrol is up around 24,000. So this is actually a little bit less.
Okay, thank you.
And I know it seems like a lot, but just to give you, we're moving in a mobile data terminal with a full computer and mount. The in-car camera systems have three cameras and a microphone. So there's an extensive amount of equipment that we do move in these vehicles every time we flip a car, just to do what it's required to do.
And car 18, the current car, it says, you're expected to get some trade-in value on that. What are you anticipating to offset the 72?
So what's going to be traded in, it's a 2019 Ford Expedition. I would hope to see 12 to 14. That's the 14 would be a high end, but 12,000 would be good.
So that'll be taken off this 72. So you expect 72 is your top
Correct.
if you don't
'Cause
get much on the trade-in.
We need to get a little bit of something for the trade-in to make that 72, but it will happen.
Okay.
The cameras and all that sort of stuff that's in the recording, is that recording stored on the same server that the cameras that you wear are served, all that data?
Yeah, so the system is integrated, so all of that data that is collected, either the in-car camera or the body camera, all goes into a cloud-based system, and that all has a repository. Every time the vehicle returns to the station, it automatically uploads. Every time the body camera goes in, and it's all synced together with the officer, the vehicle number, and the badge number of the police officer.
And that's all in the system, that the same one that we contracted with a year ago, or whatever it was?
That
That's all
is
the same?
correct.
And the recording in the vehicle, when does that audio recording, when does that start?
The officer can manually activate it. It also has I may be wrong, but it's a 10 or 12-second pre-record. It's always recording on the car. So if there was an accident in front of you and then you flipped your lights on, it would have that accident captured if it was facing the right direction. And then anytime you activate your emergency lights or there's a major impact with the vehicle, so say, gosh forbid, the vehicle was impacted or they drove over a curb or something, it would turn on the in-car camera system.
If the officer's in the car, on lunch, whatever, and is calling their spouse, is that recording? They're in the car.
Yes.
So
Yikes.
the in-car camera system has a pre-record. It does not do audio, it just does video for the pre-record. So once it catches up to that, then the video would start. Some of the triggers, if I'm by the car and I turn my body camera on, it turns the car camera on, and vice versa.
I'm worried about the audio.
Okay, the audio starts when you actually hit the record. The pre-record does not have audio.
Okay. So the person can have a private phone conversation and not have it be recorded.
Correct.
Any other commissioner questions? Comments? Any public comment? Seeing none, I'm going to call a vote on Resolution 2025-12. All in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. Next is 3G, Resolution 2025-11. The Radnor Township Police Department requests to purchase and enter into an agreement for the term of February 1st, 2025 through January 31st, 2026, with the United States Department of Agriculture to conduct white-tailed deer and Canada geese management in the amount of $69,087.91. The funds for this purchase requisition will come from the 2025 Animal Control Contracted Services budget. Could I have a motion, please? And a second. Lieutenant Pinto.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you very much for having me tonight. I was asked to present this PowerPoint about the ongoing white-tailed deer and Canada goose management program going on at Township, put together by our OEO, Michael Maratay. So the white-tailed deer management program has its beginning in Radnor Township in 2012. At that time, the township performed a deer study to understand the quality of the deer, the quantity of deer in the township. We, at that time, partnered with the United States Department of Agriculture, Wildlife Services to complete the survey. At the end of that survey, it was shown to tell us that we had approximately 1,394 deer living in the township, which is roughly 101 deer per square mile. And at that time, prior to any interaction, we responded to over 84 deer being killed by motor vehicles in the township, as well as 67 other incidents involving deer damage or to property or automobiles. Here you have the statistics of the deer management program starting in 2012 up until and including 2024. They are pretty self-explanatory with the estimated number of deer in the township, the number of deer culled by the USDA, the number of deer culled by our private hunters, which is a ongoing program that we work in conjunction with our partnership with the USDA, the number of deer killed by motor vehicles, and then all other deer calls. And obviously, there's a couple years where, due to COVID and other related issues, we didn't do studies or we didn't actually do the deer culling. So that's why some of those numbers are blank there. Our deer density per square mile starting in 2012 at 101, got down to our lowest at 2018, where we got us down to 14 deer per square mile. Just some side information, the typical deer density required for a standard suburban community, somewhere between 6 to 8. Radnor Township can comfortably handle a larger number than that because we used to have so much more open space. As you all are aware, our open space is dwindling, so the number of deer that we can safely contain is also going to diminish with that as well. And as you can see by the years where we did not do the deer culling, the deer density responds right back. These are the deer incidents throughout the township. They're broken down into other and killed by auto. The lime green is the other. The yellowy brown is killed by auto. And you can see the dramatic effects that we've had in reducing those incidents over the years with the deer culling program. These are just some typical pictures that we've taken, autos involving deer. And it's not just on our back roads. As you can see the picture on the right, unless I'm mistaken, that's actually Lancaster Avenue in between the Blue Route interchanges right there. So that's a pretty significant amount of damage caused by one deer. Since 2012, we've removed approximately 2,072 deer from the township. Private hunters have removed a total of 10 deer in 2024. There was some issues with the deer, the private group that we were using. We had to explain to them that with the right and privileges that we're giving them, that some expectations needed to be met, and we are hoping to have a much better number in 2025. The deer density dropped from 101 deer per square mile in 2012 to 50 in 2024. Deer killed by vehicles is down to 31 by the end of 2024. Total responses from 151 down to 19 through 2024. And we've transported, had processed and packaged and donated charitable food in the amount of 6,460 pounds of venison in 2024 alone. Nothing goes to waste. It all goes to good causes. Our recommendations is we believe that we should continue to monitor the deer through the surveys, which is included in the proposal that you have before you. We believe that we should continue to do culling. USDA is recommending a minimum of at least 8 nights. The budget you have before you is for 10 nights and hopefully 200 deer. That is obviously subject to the success of the operations as they go on. We will continue to try to gain access to private properties in Radnor Township, as well as township property that we can access safely. And we will continue to continue to utilize the private hunting club that we are with, along with some of our officers who are also hunters, and they're joining part of this group, and hopefully get those numbers increased, taken by traditional hunting throughout the course of the year. The Canada goose management, current population in Pennsylvania is estimated to be just over 200,000 birds, and they are observed in every county. There are approximately 1 million resident Canada geese in the Atlantic Flyway, with more residing in Pennsylvania than any other state. The resident goose population has increased threefold between 1990 and 1999, so much so that they've made a designation between the geese that still migrate and the geese that don't even migrate anymore because they don't have to. These are some of the health threats. I'm sure all of you are aware of geese, what goes on at the willows, the amount of feces and waste that's in the pond, the disease it carries, the bacteria, the damage that they do when they're nesting and they're feeding. Goose management activities, we will continue to discourage feeding of the waterfowl within the township. A nest egg treatment will occur approximately 7 to 10 intervals for 8 weeks during the nesting seasons. What that does is it treats the eggs, keeps the eggs from hatching, but believe it or not, the mating pair will not mate. They'll stay on the nest thinking that the eggs are going to hatch. We will continue to do roundup up to 20 geese from the molting site, if possible, to remove 50% of all molting geese. The number of geese that are observed on the site will be documented prior to molting to ensure the legal number of geese are removed. These are still federally protected animals, and we are obligated to follow the numbers that we're allowed to remove with this process. And they will be able to provide the USDA, that is, any further assistance in deterring Canada geese and preventing other wild damage upon our request. I'd like to thank you for your time. I'd like to point out Mike Marte, who took this over from me several years ago, and he's continuing to do a great job, and we hope you continue to support us in this program. And with that, if you have any questions.
Thank you so much. I have one quick one. The private hunters that you're trying to encourage that come out, do they get to keep their meat, or are
Yes.
they also? So I wondered what the benefit was to them.
The big distinction is the private hunters are still subject to all Pennsylvania game laws, so they're obligated to retrieve the animal, take it to a designated place and process. That's all on them. It's all their fee, their obligation, and their pay. And that meat is not necessarily donated, and that's not included in the figures that we presented to you in that list.
Thank you.
Yes.
Go
I have
ahead.
a couple questions.
Sure.
One to the, on the private hunters, I understand that when we're culling and we're using our own officers or sharpshooters, we're actually, we're seeding the area and
Correct.
and bringing them in.
Correct.
Do private hunters get to do that?
So again, there's a distinction between the culling and what we do and what the private hunters do. There are circumstances where private hunters are allowed to hunt over bait. It's based on the size of the property that you're hunting and the special permit that you have to apply through the Game Commission. Now that the farm is mostly developed now, there are very few spaces that I can think of that would meet the criteria size-wise that a regular hunter would be allowed to bait. But I'm uncomfortable in saying that I'm uncomfortable to say that it does not happen, but I can't think of a space that would be big enough that would meet the requirements for that.
Understood. I believe it was at last year's program, a resident in the 5th Ward heard some shots at night, didn't know what was going on, got very concerned that there was something happening and didn't realize that it was a planned and strategic program. Can you talk a little bit about how we, beyond this great presentation, thank you very much, how else do we communicate to the community when something's going to be happening maybe near or their property? For those who haven't given you access to their private property, but may it be abutting areas?
With respect, and at the request of the United States Department of Agriculture and Wildlife Service, we do not advertise and put out that we're going to be doing this based on their experience, it advertises and it opens us up to people who will come into our community to protest over and above the people that live in our community. There are incidents where we have some landowners that are more senior. They would like a heads up, so we do kind of give them a little call, say, hey, it's Monday, we're going to be out in the area, more likely closer to Tuesday, Thursday, but not generally this week, so you'll know we'll be in the area. We will extend them that courtesy, but we do not, and the USDA almost makes it mandatory, we do not advertise and we do not put it out.
I appreciate that you're doing some of those private heads up, maybe to
Sure.
people who've been impacted before.
Sure.
Thank you.
Hi, Lieutenant. Could you go back to that slide where it was like 2019 zero? It's like a bar graph? No, a little bit, yeah.
Right.
So it was deer per square mile were zero in 2019 and then 2020?
That, ma'am, would be 2019 and 2021 was because the studies were not done. So what,
So that's why
yes.
deer could be killed even though there weren't any?
No,
Okay. I
This-
was like, this didn't make sense to me, that's all.
the deer density doesn't have anything, well, it's a direct relation to how many deer are culled, but this graph is telling you, so with each year that the budget comes forward, and included in this budget, we would get 2 nights of study. And what the USDA does is they drive the entire township on a designated route. And they drive the same route 2 nights in consecutive, and they count deer in the areas where they are and the estimated distance they are from the roadway, and if it's possible, the sex of the deer and everything like that. They then take those numbers and put them into an algorithm, which I don't pretend to understand or would have even seen, and that algorithm spits out the numbers that you see there. The reason why there's zeros under those years is definitely not because there were not any deer in the township, it's just because the studies were not done that year. And I apologize, seems pretty obvious why, to me anyway, why 2021 might have not been done because of COVID. I don't know why it wasn't done in 19. I can't answer to that. Yes.
Any other questions or comments?
As every year, you guys are invited to my garden.
We welcome it, but unfortunately, we see this a lot. The people who want us to come to their properties and cull deer, we just can't extend the service to them because our utmost priority is safety, and we just can't do it. But if it's a possibility, we would gladly come and help you out.
So you can't, you can't announce dates or where you're going, but do you have a list? So you think there's 10 dates this year? Do you have the list?
We're going to ask you for 10 dates.
Do you have the list of parks or areas that you plan to?
So that is an ongoing process because it changes from year to year. Like one year you may say, hey, I want to do it. Next year you don't. So we're in the process right now of gathering private properties. I can guarantee you that we're going to come and ask the township manager for every township park and property that we can get. The manager makes that decision, I'm assuming after conferring with you guys. But there's no definitive plan in place right now until, quite honestly, if you guys decide that we're going to continue to move forward, then we will continue to take those efforts. There's a form that has to be signed out by all property owners, including the township, that signs off that they're doing it, and every private residence that allows us to do it. So it's kind of a painstaking process that we're more than happy to do, but we're only going to do it if you guys give us the go-ahead.
And then after the fact, do you guys get a readout of the parks that were visited and how many deer were
Yeah,
called
we
in
get a
each park?
study. We get a study. It is in-depth, everything from ages of the animals, sexes of the animals. I believe they break it down. I know they break it down to quadrants of the township, so you could probably surmise what parks are in there, but I don't believe it's going to say, hey, we got 3 from the Willows, 2 from Skunk Hollow. It'll probably say, hey, we got 10 from this section of the map, much to the way you break down your wards for your individual wards.
Can you make that available to the board when you get it?
Oh, absolutely, and I can probably get the most recent one to you guys. I'd have to, Mike probably has that, and if not, they can resend it to us, so we can.
That'd be great.
Someone, Chief, usually remind me to do that. Yes, we can do that, it's not a problem.
And then can you break down the cost? Why does it cost
Sure.
$66,000?
Right here. So the bulk of the cost is for the personnel themselves, which is $32,817. The vehicle use, the use of their truck, their gas, and their equipment is $1,080. Supplies and equipment, which I'm assuming is their ammunition, their bulbs, their batteries for their lights. They do have to do qualifying every day before they come out, is $2,660. Lodging per day, I'm sorry, it says lodging and per diem, which I'm assuming is their meal requisite for the day. To the members of the USDA is $3,622. That subtotals out to $40,179. Pool job costs and indirect costs, it comes out to roughly, well, I can give you $4,419 and $6,488 respectively, for a total of $51,087.91. And we are estimating a cost of $18,000 for the actual butchering and processing of the animals, which comes down to $90 per animal, for a total cost of $69,087.91. And someone had asked me today about the $90 per deer price, and I felt that was good, but now that I'm sitting here thinking that that's actually better than I thought, because I will spend, in my personal life, when I'm successful to get an animal, I will spend just about that, but the animal I take them will be expected to be field dressed. None of these animals are field dressed, so that's a whole added process for the butcher.
And then how many members are part of the team?
Our private hunting team?
No, the USDA.
Oh, so they go out, they have a
Yeah, I see them on the back of on the truck when they go out.
right, yeah, there's usually two of them. They have a spotter and a shooter. And then they go out, we go out with a driver. We supply the driver. And usually a law enforcement officer goes out with them. We were one of the first ones to do that for the USDA. In fact, it was a trial basis because they didn't know how it was going to work out. They were uncomfortable about it. But I'm proud to say it worked out very well, and it comes into very handy on the very few times when people do come out and they are concerned. You know, the officer, like I said, I had the pleasure of doing this for, I think it was the first 5 or 6 years. You know, you can identify yourself, tell them who they are, tell them that they're, you know, not only are they government agents, they're represented by the township, hired by the township, the police are here, we're helping them, and it goes a long way to calming them down. At least it has in my experience.
Okay. No, I appreciate the insight. I mean, as always, you know, I'm just a little concerned about activity in parks where we know there's late night activity from the neighborhood. So, you know, if we can stay out of those parks, I'd appreciate that.
Well, again, what I said earlier, we won't go into any
no.
parks where you guys tell us not to. But I can tell you, we do use, and I don't want to bore you with the night vision and
Nope.
everything else, so.
Yeah, we've gone through that.
Yes.
I'm still, it's still, I'd be more comfortable if it was at other parks where we know there's not late night, there's not the potential for late night activity.
Sure. Anybody?
Well, perhaps you could discuss that with, you know, parks you have concern. Oh, you have already. Fine. Good. Excellent. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
that
Appreciate your
concise
time.
report. Actually, was there any public questions or participation? Sorry, I let you. Well, I don't know.
You have a question for me? Could be. I'll love to hear it. Thank you.
Sarah Pilling, 29 Garrett Avenue. There's been a report that bird flu is in geese in the Philadelphia area. So I don't think that involves the USDA, but is the township, when you're touring, are you keeping an eye out for geese that look sick?
So,
You can come over here.
So I'm going to answer this kind of indirectly. I can tell you that if anything was found in the deer, we would know. I have not been as involved in the Canada goose abatement. So I'm going to speculate and say absolutely, if something was to be found in them, they would let us know. Specifically, if it was going to be a health hazard to humans and stuff like that. But just in full disclosure, I know they've done it with the deer. I cannot say specifically about the goose, but that's something we could definitely find out for you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think that's something that we should begin to look into, because there's absolutely transmission. That's my concern.
Yeah, I also think we ought to be sure that people are wearing protective gear and whatnot when they're messing with, I'm sure they are, but, a nest is not usually such a sanitary area to begin with, so. Excellent, thank you. Any other public comment? All right, seeing none, I'm going to call a vote on Resolution 2025-11. All in favor? Aye, unanimous. All right, as I mentioned, we removed 3H from the agenda. Next, we have 3I, Resolution 2025-15. The Radnor Township Police Department is seeking to purchase 7 digital speed boards to be used by the Radnor Township Police Department. The Radnor Township Police will purchase new speed boards from Radar Sign, a Pennsylvania CoStarz compliant company, and will not exceed the amount of $22,520. The new digital speed boards will be purchased under the approved 2025 capital fund. Could I have a motion, please? And a second? Seconded by Commissioner Riley. I don't know who wants to speak to this. Chief?
Thank you. The speed boards, as you know, get mounted in different locations where we get concerns or we take a proactive approach to a possible area that has a speeding problem. So they're eagerly replacing some ones that have fallen apart, and we're very excited to get these back up and running.
Terrific. That actually seems like kind of a deal as far as things we usually spend money on. Yeah, is there any commissioner questions or comments?
I have just a quick comment or question. Are these just speed boards that flash information to the driver, or are they capturing data about speed and volume?
Commissioner, great question. That we did purchase the suite that has the ability to collect data. So when they're placed in a location that is in line, they will do both, and then sometimes they're placed in a location where it only picks up speed just based on what the eye can manage and process. And then we collect that data and use it for our staff traffic, which many of you send in different constituent complaints, and we use that data to help, provide accuracy and real-time information.
And just a quick follow-up. Currently, how many of those, I always heard it called the black box, so how many of those data capturing tools do we currently have and deploy out when a neighborhood is concerned about speed and volume?
Right now, they all are out of service. They take a beating due to the weather and also the battery life, so all of our boards are not repairable. We even had a local school, the Hilltop School, trying to help us get one back up and running, and we tried our best. So we don't have any right now. We do have some machines that can collect data and an old school tubes. If you note the sort of the gas station pump lines that go across, so we can do it if required. These will allow us to just, once they're mounted, collect the data. We're very excited to get them, hopefully get approved.
Thank you.
Chief, just a little more context on that. The students were trying to fix the black box?
They offered in our desperation of this, they had some really inspirational teachers there, and they did it as a school project, trying to rewire it, put a new battery. We got them a new battery, just trying to get it up and running while we were waiting for this to come through for 2025.
Yeah, impressive. And so is the idea 7 boxes, 1 for each ward, and then it'll rotate within each ward?
Our concept is 7 boxes for 7 wards, 100%. Sometimes based on the need, or if we're doing a certain street that we may put double up, but it allows everybody to have an equal coverage. We used to have 2 or 3, and it was kind of a debate where they ended up. This makes it a lot easier. We keep them evenly distributed through all sections of the township to make sure everybody's getting traffic calming effects.
So for most part of the year, we can assume that within each of the wards, we're going to have a box up working on some street that's been highlighted as, either a neighbor wants to collect data or there's been an issue with potential speeding.
100% accurate, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Is 7 enough? Really? Is that enough?
7, I think for right now, fully functional is a great start. You do have to remember that it is a little labor intensive. We usually, at the minimum, they're up 7 days at the minimum. And then usually if there's a specific speeding complaint, we try and keep them up at least 2 weeks. So that, a month goes by very quickly when you're moving them around. There's a little bit of time where they do have to come back to collect data. And so it just depends on what the board is being used for. So I think 7 is a real great way to start out. We'll see how this new technology, everything's a little smaller, as you know, everything kind of increases. So we're excited to see how easy it is to move them, and then maybe we'll have a conversation with Mr. White if we need more.
Okay.
Are these solar to battery powered?
They do not have, we're using battery-powered ones. The other ones just created some real significant labor problems, and they're limited. These mount on the very thin tracks of speed limit signs and stop signs that you track, so it really allows us to be a lot more nimble. The other ones, if you remember, were massive. They were massive, and it just created... we couldn't mount them. We couldn't use them on some streets due to the width. So this is really going to enhance our capability.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Any public participation? Seeing none, I'm going to call a vote on Resolution 2025-15. All in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. And that concludes our business agenda. Reports of board liaisons. Anybody? No? Any new business? Old business? Seeing none, we have a final public participation. Seeing none, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn. And a second? All in favor? Aye. We're adjourned.